Today, we're fortunate to be joined again by Mr. Pat Holland from the Missouri Freedom Initiative, but we're going to talk about something that's going on a national level. Could gold and silver literally be going to the moon if a representative from West Virginia, Alex Mooney, has his way? He has introduced legislation on a national level, HR 2435, which would return the United States to the gold standard. We're going to talk about that with Pat today and a lot more. Pat, welcome back to Ron's Basement.
Hey, Ron, thank you so much for having me back today. It's good to be with you, and the Bears are still there with blindfolds on, but gosh darn it, silver and gold are climbing, you know. We might be able to take the blindfolds off and the handcuffs off here pretty soon.
It's maybe coming sooner than we expected. So
yeah, well, we can hope and pray for that. But okay, let's get down to business here with Mooney's bill. I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I think some of your viewers may be upset with me on my thoughts on this, but I'm a pragmatist. So I'm going to give you my thoughts on this, and be it good, bad, the good, bad, and the ugly. We're about to get it now. The fact that the bill has been introduced is good because it raises awareness that the dollar is dying. Okay, so that is a good thing, and it's going to help gold and silver. There's no doubt in my mind. Let's talk about the bad. The bad is this bill will never, ever, ever, ever get through. And I want your viewers to understand that. And the reason why it won't get through is actually the ugly. The ugly is the Federal Reserve will never, ever go back to gold on the dollar, ever, because there's mechanisms in place to prevent this too. The reason is we can't have just unrestricted war. We can't pay for welfare programs if we go back on a gold standard. The entire system that they have set up for dependency of citizens on the system collapses under that scenario. That's why, unfortunately, and that's the ugly.
So it would prohibit their ability to print electronic or paper money into infinity to pay for wars, to pay for social programs. Yeah, I mean, I saw a couple of calculations that people threw out there that if this were to happen and the dollar were to be backed right now fully by gold, that gold would be north of $350,000 per ounce.
I don't know the numbers, but you're probably correct. And the reason being is because the amount of debt and unfunded liabilities and what we got in derivatives is mind-blowing. We're talking quadrillions of dollars here in derivatives. In order for them to keep their value, I think you're probably right. $350,000 an ounce sounds about right.
So are we in a position now where it's almost like a spiral in terms of the US dollar? And,
yes,
and let me throw this, this thought just came to mind. So if somebody wants to protect themselves, if our central bank isn't going to back our money, or we're not going to have real money with our central bank, then it's in their best interest to be their own central bank.
Yes,
and to acquire gold and silver on their own.
That's an excellent thought. Let me expand on that. Okay, because we still have the Constitution, even though the clowns in DC don't acknowledge it anymore. And that's just a fact. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm offensive on that matter, but I understand legislation. But the fact is, people should be setting up their own central banks with gold and silver, but so should states. And that is totally allowable in the United States Constitution. States need depositories. They need depositories. This is literally how they protect the people's money. But your money that you didn't give up to the people, every April or what have you, needs to also be a mini depository. And that is my opinion. By the way, that's the way things were 100 years ago, 110, right before the Federal Reserve Act, 16th Amendment, which should be repealed, but won't. So that's my take on it. Yes, you're correct. You need to be a central bank, Ron, but your state also needs to be a central bank. And the central bank should be based on real money, and the Constitution says that's gold and silver.
And we have 23 states that have either already or are in the process of forwarding or passing some type of gold and silver legal tender legislation. What came to mind as you were talking is it's almost like a two-layered system, right? Like you protect yourself on a personal level, you be your own central bank, but maybe you're in your best interest to make sure that you live in a state which also has that same philosophy and has either passed or is in the process of passing some type of legal tender legislation.
Yep, and we'll talk about that in another video here real quick, but you're absolutely correct. People, I can't stress this enough. If you have legislation in your state for gold and silver, if you are not making phone calls, sending emails, or if you can, which is really important, visiting your capital, you may lose that legislation this year when you need it the most. Please support your state's legislation. And I'll talk to Ron, my good friend Ron in the basement. I have an in with him. Maybe he'll list down below the states that have legislation in this video in the description section so that you know which states. And if you're in one of those states, look up, just click on the link, get the bill number, and start making your phone calls. Start supporting that legislation. Even if it's just removing sales tax from gold and silver, that's a very important first step. If you have sales tax in your state, get rid of it because money cannot be taxed.
And I think most of the states have, but there's still some stragglers that are
8 states.
Unbelievably charging sales tax when somebody you don't buy silver and gold, right? You don't buy, you convert. You convert your paper electronic currency into real money. And the fact that they would on that conversion charge a tax is really astounding.
Well, the whole concept of converting worthless fiat dollars into actually a metal that's a store of value is an astounding concept to me. But yes, that's exactly what we do. Worthless fiat dollars that we have to give up our energy to earn, to be able to, actually get in order to get something of value. But that's how the system still works. That's how you know that there is a smidgen of a free market left, is that you can take your stored energy out of those worthless fiat dollars and put it into something of value.
Yeah, because somebody can print those dollars at a whim, right? They can create them out of nothing. The other thing that came to mind as we were talking, we talked about the two layers: personal level, state level. Then we go to the national level where it's never going to happen, right? Just mathematically, like we already discussed. But then when you zoom out even further to a worldwide level, the world, right, the BRICS countries, the 70% of the world's population that's either part of BRICS or now expressing interest, they're moving to gold and silver.
That's right. And actually, we should have seen this coming. In fact, actually, you and I did see this coming, Ron. And I've been talking about it. You've been talking about it for years and years now, with me going back to 2017, that the central banks in the eastern part, or the eastern hemisphere, have been acquiring gold and silver for a long time. We knew it had something to do with the BRIC nations and their policies. This is something that they intend. They're either going to back a currency with gold and silver, or they're going to go to gold and silver as currency, as money in their countries. There's no other reason to do it. None. Other than, they anticipate needing the metals for huge industry booms in their countries, but you just don't need that much gold. Gold is not as industrial as silver is. Gold's important, don't get me wrong, folks, and it is needed, but not like silver. They're not hoarding silver like they're hoarding gold. Gold is unfortunately is much more synonymous with money, but silver is much more synonymous with the dollar. So at any rate, as confusing as that is, that's my take on it.
First Mining Gold is a development company advancing two of the largest gold projects in Canada: Springpole in Ontario and Duparquet, located in Quebec. Each already has 5 million ounces of gold reserves, but exploration initiatives are underway at both projects to find even more gold. First Mining is well-financed, has zero debt, and owns an interest in 4 additional Canadian gold development projects.
Well, and if the world central banks did decide to start hoarding silver, it would take about what, all of 5 minutes for them to wipe out the total supply in the world. I mean,
you're being generous. I don't think
yeah,
5 minutes, yeah,
right.
I think actually it would be much, much quicker than that. Well, at least I'd see the price being driven up, but they don't want to do silver because silver's too critical to industry. They don't want to monetize it. No one wants to monetize it. Everyone's scared of it. And Mexico has it. Mexico, like I said, they're in a very special position they're not going to be taking orders from anybody, Mexico.
Yeah.
Unless someone wants to go in with a military and take over their country because they have silver. But that would be a very difficult thing to do. But going back to Mooney's bill and to kind of wrap up here, I'm sorry, guys, that is the exciting part about that bill is raising awareness that the dollar's in trouble. That's the exciting part of the bill. It will never pass. It will never get through. It's not allowed. It will not be allowed. And just remember, people who try to get us off of the dollar in the past haven't done so well. Sometimes they have lead poisoning in their brain. And I mean, we don't need to go further than that.
Right. Well, and I think the moral to the story is, as we talked about this today, either live in a country, which would not be the United States, that does respect the value of gold and or silver, or live in a state where you're protected because of legislation that's either in process or has already been passed. And most importantly, on a personal level, protect yourself, be your own central bank.
That's correct. And support legislation in your states, gang. Critical, because you're running out of time to get those bills done in most states. So support that bill. Keep doing, call more than just your representative and more than just your senator. Call the adjacent or, adjoining, districts to yours. Call them as well. Be a larger, force than just a single phone call and a single email. And then basically, start getting your state prepared and get yourself prepared as well, as Ron has been talking about for years. And we're not financial consultants, by the way.
No, we are not. But it's an interesting scenario. Something that came to mind here I want to wrap up with is, the fact that this legislation has almost no real chance of being passed. Actually, maybe the silver lining, pardon the pun to that, is that it actually shows how valuable gold really is, that the United States government, because that the fact that in 71 Nixon took us off the gold standard, how scared they are of precious metals.
Indeed.
That just showed, because the rest of the world recognizes it. Pat, as always, on behalf of my viewers, thank you. You're well loved in Ron's basement. Even the bear loves you. And hopefully we'll get to talk to you again soon.
Great. Thank you so much for having me back, Ron. God bless you, man. Take care.
See you, Pat.